Hello folks, and welcome to GED Microlearning. So we're going to start our quiz today with some basic arithmetic, and question 1 looks at rounding. So it says, which of the following correctly shows this number rounded to the nearest 100,000? So we're looking at place values. And just kind of a quick reminder, these first three numbers would be kind of your hundreds, then your tens, and then to the right your ones. I think this is pretty straightforward. And then here we start with our thousands, then 10,000s, 100,000s, and then million. Okay, so in the question, and there it is again, if you want to look at it that way. So in this question, it asks us to round to the nearest 100,000, so it would be that position, that's 7. So if you look to the right of the 7, you can see it's an 8. That means that we're going to round up. Okay, so this number is actually going to be rounded up to that. Okay, question 2. So question 2 is another question with place values, but it also asks you to be able to add decimals. So it says Joe bought several items in the grocery store, $7.99 for pizza, $3.50 for milk, 99 cents for mango, and 5 bananas at 19 cents each. So round this bill up to the nearest tenth. So if we look at our place values, that's the tenths. Okay, and basically all you have to do is add up your bill and round to that number. Once again, you can see to the right of the 4 is a 3, so you would be rounding down, not up. So that would be your correct answer. Okay, great. So now we're going to move on to a distance problem, and it says Lucy drove 8 hours at a rate of 60 miles per hour. How far did she travel? So remember, this is a really useful formula to remember. So distance equals rate times time. So here they've given us the rate and the time, and all you have to do is plug those numbers in, and that will give you the total distance she traveled. All right, question 4. Mike and his roommates went for coffee. They bought 2 cappuccinos, 1 small coffee, and 3 muffins. What was the total cost? All right, so this is a problem that involves cost, and the formula for this is very simple because you probably do this when you go shopping as it is. So the formula for cost is the number of units multiplied by the price per unit. So here, the first thing that you would do is you would look at your drinks. So they had 2 cappuccinos, so you would multiply 350 times 2 to get the cappuccinos, and then add the small coffee. That gives you that amount. And then you're going to repeat that for the muffins, and then add these two numbers together, which gives you a total of 14 and 19 cents. Okay, question 5. So it says Lucy paid $20.50 for 8 bus transfer tickets. How much did she pay for ticket? All right, so this is pretty straightforward as well. So you would just take that number and divide it by 8. That's going to give you the price per ticket. All right, so we're going to move on to the next section, which deals with decimals and fractions. So the question reads, a plumber cut 2 lengths of pipe measuring 3.2 meters and 1.7 meters from an 8-meter pipe. So if we were to represent that with a picture, so that's the pipe they give us, which is 8 meters, and then one chunk is 3.2, the other one is 1.7, and essentially all you have to do is find x. Okay, so this would be pretty straightforward. So if you set it up as an algebra equation, it would look something like this. So if you add 3.2 plus 1.7, that gives you 4.9 plus x. And now all you have to do is solve for x. So on the left side, you would subtract 4.9. So those two numbers cancel out. Do the same thing on the right side. And then that gives you x is equal to 3.1. All right, and it's always good to check your answer. So if you add those 3 numbers together, you should end up with 8. Option C. Okay, question 7. Pepe ran 3 miles. His times for individual miles were 7.2, 6.4, and 8.3. 13. How long did it take him in minutes to run the 3-mile distance? All right, so this is very straightforward. The only reason I've put it here is because sometimes when people add decimals manually, they can make a mistake. But of course, if you're doing this in a calculator, all you have to do is add those the times that he took for each individual mile. All right, 4 friends decide to run a mile together. Below are the times in minutes. Who ran the fastest mile? All right, so this type of question is those drop-down menu questions where you have a little drop-down menu that you click to select your answer. And you can see that all the friends ran around a 7-minute mile. So which one was fastest? So whenever you have numbers that have a decimal, the first thing, like in this case, if they all have the same, you would look at the number on the left of the decimal point, first of all, to see which one is greater. So in this case, they all ran a 7-minute mile. So the next thing that you do is you look at what's on the right side of the decimal point, okay? And you look at that number to see which one is greater or smaller. All right, so in this case, the greater number is on the left, the smallest is on the right. So we go back to our table, and again, all of them ran around 7 minutes. You would look at that number to see who is fastest. And you can see that the smallest number is Ben because he ran 7.02, okay, so which is the smallest number of the 4 of them. Okay, at Acme Company, 5/6 of the workers are in the company's rideshare program. If there are 582 workers, how many of them are not in the rideshare program? Okay, so this you do it in several steps. So the first is find out the fraction of people who do not rideshare. Okay, so we would say 6 minus 6 over 6, or 1 minus 5/6, which is the people who participate in rideshare. That gives you 1/6 of the company does not rideshare. And now all you have to do is multiply that number by the total number of people in the company. Okay, so if you multiply by that fraction, you multiply across, and then divide by 6, that gives you 97 people. Option C. Okay, so question 10 looks at adding fractions. Adding mixed numbers. So it says an advertising panel is made up of 3 pieces that are 13 3/5 inches long. If the 3 panels are joined vertically, what is the combined length in inches of the panel? Okay, so essentially the panel looks like this. And all you have to do is add all of these bits together. So if we add sorry, I put this in the wrong order. But if we add the whole numbers first, we would end up with 39. And then if we add the fraction parts, we end up with 9/5. So, okay, so 39 and 9/5. So this has to be further simplified. So if you simplify 9/5, you could also say it's equivalent to 5 over 5 plus 4 over 5. Okay, and 5 over 5 is 1. Okay, so it's 4 over 5. Okay, so now you have that amount plus 39, which is going to equal 40, and 4 over 5, okay, which is option B. All right, so the next section deals with ratios, proportions, and percents. Question 11, what is the ratio of Rao supporters to James supporters? Okay, so here you would set up a ratio. So if you look at the table, Rao has 175 supporters and James has 105. Okay, but you're not done yet. Okay, so now what you have to do is you have to find a number that both of these numbers divide by. And the number in this case is 35. Okay, so if you divide both numbers by 35, this ratio goes down to 5:3. Okay, so the correct answer would be B. Question 12. The distance between city A and city B is 750 miles. If a map scale says that 2 inches is 150 miles, how many map inches would the distance between city A and B be? Okay, so this is an example of a proportion. So a proportion is simply a relationship between 2 values. It's kind of like if I told you a 1/4 is equal to 25 cents, right? That's a proportion. So you would write it 1/4 over 25 cents. What if I asked you how many cents are in 7/4? Well, you would set up your proportion like that, where the x is the unknown. And then basically all you have to do is solve for x by multiplying diagonally like that and like that. Okay, so let's go back to our problem. So in this case, the proportion is this, inches to miles. Okay, so they've told us that 2 inches is 150 miles. And now they want us to tell us how many inches is that equivalent to on the map. Okay, so you would plug your numbers in like that and basically solve for x. Okay, so you do that by multiplying across like this. That gives you this number. And then in order to solve for x, you have to divide 150 on the left side. Remember that what you do on the left, you have to do to the right, and that gives you 10 inches. Okay, that would be answer B. Okay, question 13 is a percent problem. So it says a jacket with a price tag of $114 has a 25% back to school sale discount on it. What will the final price of the jacket be? Okay, so here, what you do, you can either do this 2 ways. So this is kind of like the long-winded way, but I'll show you another way. Okay, so one way to do it is to set up a proportion like that. Okay, so if you want to find out how much the jacket will be reduced, you would set up your proportion like that and do the same thing as we did before. So multiply diagonally, and that gives you, $28.50, which is how much the jacket will be reduced. That's the long way. The short way is simply to multiply, to remember that 25%, if you make that into a decimal, it's 0.25. So if you multiply that by the price, that gives you the same thing, okay, 28.50. Okay, so that's step 1. So now step 2 is then find out what the final price is. And all you have to do here is that you have to subtract that discount that you just found out from the original price. That gives you $85.50, which is option A. Okay, question 14. So it says Kevin's payroll deductions are 30% of his earnings. If he gets $420 deducted for a 2-week period, how much were his total earnings for those weeks? Okay, so here we're going to set up a proportion like this, okay, where this is the equation that you're going to use. So we know that the part, meaning how much he got deducted, was 420. And we need to find out the whole, or his total earnings. Then you would plug in the 30% into the equation like that. And once again, remember you're going to multiply diagonally. So 30 times x and 100 times 420. And that's what it gives you. And then you're going to divide both sides by 30. Okay, so that gives you the total amount that he earned for those weeks. And then always good to check your work, so let's just make sure that that is correct. So we said that he earned a total of $1,400. So if we multiply that by the deductions, which were 30% or 0.30, you end up with 420, okay, which is what he got deducted, as you can see from the question. Okay, so question 15 is a ratios question. So it says, a team played 93 games and won 64 of them. There were 5 tied games. What is the ratios of wins to losses? Okay, so basically they won 64, lost 24, tied 5. So the ratio of wins to losses would be 64 to 24. But remember that you always have to simplify ratios to their lowest expression, meaning that you have to find a number that divides by both of these numbers. So in this case, that number is 8. So if you divide both sides by 8, that gives you a ratio of 8 to 3, which is option C. All right, so we're going to move on to the next section, which is algebra word problems. So in the first question, it asks you to change a temperature from Fahrenheit to Celsius. And this is actually pretty straightforward. So all you have to do is take that temperature that they're giving you in Fahrenheit and introduce it into that formula there on the top right. When you do that, you end up with a temperature of 22 degrees centigrade, which is option A. All right, next question. It says simplify the expression and write your answer in the box below. Okay, so what you want to do first of all is, this is actually a very straightforward problem. All you have to do is clean it up a little bit. And what I mean by that is that you're going to have to combine like terms and write a single expression. Okay, so by like terms we mean that all those numbers that have an x squared have to be added together, all those numbers that have an x next to them have to be added together, and then all the whole numbers have to be added together. Okay, so we have x squared, 5x squared, and then we have plus 3x plus 6x, which would give us positive 9x, and then we have negative 6 plus negative 9, which would give us minus 15. All right, and that's all there is to this question. All right, next question, it asks us to simplify this expression, and the first thing that you have to do here is use the distributive property. Okay, so what that means is that you're going to take that negative 2 just before the bracket and multiply it by everything that's inside the bracket. Okay, so minus 2 multiplied by x is minus 2x, and then minus 2 multiplied by positive 4 is minus 8. Step 2 is now going to take those common terms and add them together. So you would add these two together and then these two together. And then you end up with 3x plus 2, which is option B. Okay, so same sort of problem, except it's a little bit longer. So once again, you would use the distributive property. In this case, you have to do it for both kind of numbers like that. So you would end up with the expression that you see there at the bottom. And now you're going to add the common terms, so the whole numbers on one side and all the numbers that have a y with them. That would give you 5y minus 7, which is option D. All right, so the next question asks you to multiply these two expressions or simplify the expression. And one technique that you could use is the FOIL method. So just a recap, the FOIL method is an acronym for this. So whenever you have to multiply these expressions, first you're going to multiply the first two terms in your parentheses, followed by the outer terms, then the inner terms, and then the last terms. Okay, so if we do it step by step, in this case the first terms are 2x and 5x, so that would give you 10x squared. Then the outer terms would be 5x and 4, so 5x times 4 is 20x. Then the inner terms are 3 and 2x, that would give you 6x. And then finally the last terms are 3 and 4, that gives you 12. All right, and what you want to do now is then simplify this. So you would add these terms together as well, and then combine everything to make one single equation. Okay, so 20x plus 6x is 26x, and then you have the rest of the equation. So this is answer A. All right, question 21 asks you to simplify this expression. And whenever you have like an expression like that, to simplify, what you have to remember is that you have to find a common term either out of the numerator or the denominator, or or both. So in this case, the common term would be 15. So if we extract that 15 from the top, then now we can simplify this equation, right? So 15 would cancel in the top, and in the bottom it would be 3, okay, because 15 times 3 is 45. All right, so the expression is reduced to that, which is expression A. Okay, next one, same sort of scenario. So you're asked to simplify an expression, and here you have to factor out a common term. So the common term here is 13. So if you pull 13 out from the top, your equation ends up looking like this, and you can multiply that out. You use the distributive property just to confirm. So 13x times 2x, pardon me, that should be 13, not 13x. 13 times 2x squared would give you 26x squared. and then 13 times 4 would give you 54x, and 13 times 1 would give you 13. Okay, so you'd cross out that 13 there on the top, and that would be your answer. Okay, question 23. Joan and Tim worked a total of 78 hours during week 1. If X represents Tim's hours, how many hours did Tim work? All right, so essentially what they're telling us is this. Joan and Tim worked 78 hours in a week. And we know that Joan worked 32 hours, and we don't know what Tim worked. So we're going to call him X. So all you have to do here is solve for X. So on the left side of your equation, you're going to subtract 32. All right, you're going to do the same thing on the right side, and that gives you 46. All right, and just to double check your answer, if you add 46 plus 32, that gives you 78. Okay, so this question uses the substitution method. So it says a store is selling pants for $4 each and shirts for $2 each. Jill bought 18 items and paid $64. How many shirts did she buy? Okay, so this one is a little bit tricky if you're not used to using the substitution method. So you're going to set up two equations. The first equation is looking at the items purchased. So we know that she bought pants and shirts, and in total it was 18 items. Okay, we're going to call the pants X and the shirts Y. So we have that X plus Y is equal to 18. And now we're going to solve for one of the variables. I'm going to solve for X. Okay, so if we solve for X, you would subtract Y from both sides, and that gives you that. Okay, so we're going to leave that answer for hanging for a second, and we're going to go ahead and set up our second equation, which is based on cost. So we said that X represented the number of pants, and $4 was the cost, and Y represented the shirts, and $2 was the cost. And we said that in total, the pants and the shirts came up to $64. Okay, so you would set up your equation like that. Now, here's where kind of like the tricky part comes in. You're going to use that first equation, that answer that you got for X, and you're going to stick it in this equation. Okay, so wherever you see an X, you're going to put in the equation in blue. All right, so you end up with this. And now you're going to use the distributive property to kind of clean this up. Okay, so you would multiply 4 times 18, that gives you 72, and 4 times minus Y gives you 4Y. All right, now what we're going to do is clean our equation up. So 4 minus 4Y plus 2Y would give you minus 2Y. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that 72 on the left side and subtract it from the left side. And then we're also going to subtract it from the right side. Okay, so we end up with minus 2y is equal to minus 8. Y is equal to 4. All right, so so that's the number of shirts she bought, 4. Okay, so you could go ahead and check your work. So we said shirts were priced at $2, and she bought 4 of them. So if we multiply that number of shirts times the price, that gives us $8. And then for pants, which represented the X value, we said that X is equal to 18 minus Y. We said Y was 4, so X is going to be 18 minus 4, which is equal to 14. And then we said that the pants cost $4. So we would multiply 14 times $4, that gives us 56. So if you go ahead and add those two values, that gives you $64, okay, which was how much she had purchased. So that's your answer, option A. Okay, folks, so we are halfway through the quiz today, so I'm going to shameless plug for the channel. So if you're finding any value in this, if you could share it with a friend or two, really appreciate it. Okay, so here we go. So in this question, it says, in a month, Julie spends twice as much on rent as she does on food. Last month, she spent $1,500 on both. How much did she spend on rent? So basically, this is the equation. Rent plus food is going to equal 1,500. And they're telling us that she spent twice as much on rent as on food. So rent would be 2x and food would be x. So now you set up your equation, and where you had rent, you now have 2x, and where you had food, you have x. So on the left side, you would have 3x is equal to 1,500. And now you divide both sides by 3 so that you figure out what x is. But you're not done that yet, because in the question it asks you how much she spent on rent. So notice that rent is 2x, and you have the value for x. So just all you have to do is plug that x into that equation, and you end up with 1,000. All right, so the next question is an inequality. And here it's kind of like a normal algebra problem. So instead of having an equal sign, you have that greater than sign. So what you want to do is, oh, and I'm sorry, I just realized that there's a mistake there. So, sorry, the equation should be this one, 20x minus 8 greater than 20. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to simplify the left side. So instead of having minus 8, you're going to have you're going to add 8. Okay, that brings eliminates those two numbers, and then you're going to add 8 to the right side. Okay, so you end up with 2x is greater than 28. And then to isolate that x on the left side, you're going to divide by 2 on both sides. That would give you x is greater than 14. Okay, which is option B. And sorry again about the question being wrong. All right, next question is another inequality, but here you have the, you also have to use the distributive property, which we've seen before. So meaning that you're going to have to take that 5 and multiply by each of the numbers inside the parentheses. Okay, so you would multiply 5 times x and 5 times minus 2. So that would give you 5x minus 10. And now you're going to subtract, you're going to add 10 to the right side and do the same to the left side. You end up with 50 greater than 5x, and then divide both sides by 5. That gives you that 5 is less than x. Okay? Excuse me, x is less than 10. Sorry, my mind is all over. All right, question 28. So in this question is asking you to factor an equation. And usually what students do is that they go crazy just like plugging in numbers, and it wastes a lot of time. So let's just quickly recap how this works. So when you're asked to factor an equation, the first thing that you're going to look at is this number on the furthest number to the right. And step 1 is to find the factors of this number, meaning find all the numbers that when you multiply them together give you 6. Okay, so minus 1 times minus 6 gives you 6. 1 times 6 gives you 6. 2 times 3 gives you 6. Minus 2 times minus 3 gives you 6. Okay? Second step is you're going to look at that middle number, and you have to find the numbers that you looked at before that when you add together give you minus 5. Okay? So minus 1 times minus 6 give us 6, but when you add them together, that gives you minus 7. Okay, so that wouldn't work. The second one wouldn't work, this one wouldn't work, but this last one works. Okay, so minus 2 times minus 3 is 6, and minus 2 plus minus 3 is minus 5. Okay, so those are your factors. So essentially, that's what your equation would look like. And then the step 3 of factoring equations is to check your work using the FOIL method. Okay, so for the FOIL method, remember, stands for first, outer, inner, last. So if you multiply the first terms, so x times x is going to equal to x squared. Then you go for the outer terms, so x multiplied by minus 3 is going to give you minus 3x. And then the inner terms, so minus 2 times x is minus 2x, and then the last terms, minus 2 multiplied by minus 3 is equal to x. And then all you have to do is clean this up, so add those common terms, minus 3x plus minus 2x, and that would be your final answer. Okay, so if we go back to the problem, it asks us to factor this equation. Okay, so step one, once again, we're going to find those numbers that multiply together give you positive 14. And then step two is to find out of those numbers that you multiplied together that give you 14, which numbers added together give you 9. And it's actually these two numbers at the bottom. Okay, so minus 2 times minus 7 is equal to positive 14, and negative 2 plus negative 7 is negative 9. Okay, so those are your two factors. So your equation would look like that. And once again, you want to check your work using FOIL. So if you multiply the first terms, you get x squared. The outer terms, you get these two numbers, outer and inner. And then the last terms would be 14. And remember, you have to add those two terms together to clean it up. Okay, so it would be negative 7x plus minus 2x is minus 9x. All right, so question 29 asks you this is a function question. Okay, so they give you this table with some numbers, and they ask you to find the function of x. So let's quickly recap what this looks like, because it looks kind of scary, but it's actually pretty straightforward. Okay, so if they ever give you an equation like this with a table, what this is telling you is that if you put a specific value of x from the table into that equation on the left, you're going to get the value of y shown in the table. Okay, so let's do one example. So let's take 0 and let's plug it into the equation. Okay, so wherever we have an x, we're going to put a 0. And according to the table, our answer should be y is equal to 3. Okay, so if we do that, 2 multiplied by 0 is going to be 0. And then you end up with y is equal to 3. Okay, so that's basically all there is to it. So now we're going to go ahead and do our question. So here they're giving us that value of x is 10, and we have to find the y. So we take that 10, plug it into our equation like that. That gives you 46. All right, so the next question says, is a drop-down menu question. So once again, remember, these are the ones where you kind of hit a drop-down menu and that gives you the answer options. All right, so it says Claire is considering 3 job opportunities. If P represents pay and H represent hours worked, if she works 35 hours per week, which job pays more? Okay, so this is actually pretty straightforward. It's just a little bit time consuming. All you have to do is go through each job, and where you have the H, which was the number of hours, you're going to plug in the 35, which she worked. So if you do that for job 1, you end up with $288. If you do that for job 2, you end up with $222. And if you do that for job 3, you end up with $218. Okay, so this is a summary of how much she makes per job. So the best gig is job 1. Okay, question 31. Richard drove 330 miles to work. He estimates his driving time in hours using the function t is equal to miles over 60, where m is equal to miles. How long did he drive? All right, so they're giving you the formula already in the question, so all you have to do is where you have an m, which is the number of miles, you would insert that number 330. Okay, that gives you that he drove 5.5 hours, which is option A. All right, next question is inequalities. Okay, so it says which value for x makes the inequality x greater than 500 true? All right, so let's quickly remind ourselves about exponents. So whenever you have an exponent, you basically have a situation like that where x represents your base number, and the exponent represents how many times you have to multiply that base number by itself. Okay, so if you had 2 squared, you would multiply 2 times 2 by itself twice. If you have 5 raised to the 3rd power, you would multiply 5 times itself 3 times, like that. The next thing you have to remember, and this is just a rule that you have to remember, is that whenever you have anything raised to the 0, a base raised to the 0, whether that's 1, or 500 or 5,000, it's always going to equal to 1. Okay, so 1 raised to the 0 is 1, 500 raised to the 0 is 1. Okay, that's just a rule you have to remember. Okay, so if we go ahead and solve these exponents, you can see that the value that is largest is C, 3 raised to the power of 7. Okay, so that is the correct option by a long shot. All right, so the next question is a probability and statistics question. So it says, if a card is chosen at random, what is the probability of selecting a diamond from a deck of cards containing 6 diamonds, 3 clovers, 2 hearts, and 1 spade? All right, so here you have to remember this formula called the probability ratio. So whenever you're trying to figure out a probability, you would multiply the favorable outcome, or what you want the outcome to be, divided by all the possible outcomes. So in this case, they're telling us that the favorable outcome is diamonds, and there's 6 diamonds, right? And there's a total of 12 cards. So it would be 6 divided by 12, which is 1/2 or 50%. All right, so this one's a little bit trickier. So it says, what is the probability of spinning an odd number on the spinner and flipping heads in a coin toss? Okay, so here you have to, this is a 3-step process. So the first step is to find out the probability of spinning an odd number. So in this case, it would be there's 4 odd numbers out of 8. And then you would divide 4 by 8, which gives you 1/2. And then you find out the step 2 would be to find out the probability of flipping heads in a coin toss, right? So it's either going to be heads or tails. So you have a 50% chance. And then finally, step 3 is you're going to combine these 2 probabilities by multiplying them together. Okay, so remember that when you multiply fractions, you just multiply across. So that gives you 1/4, which is option C. All right, so employees at Big City earn an hourly wage plus commissions. Claire is paid under option C and works 20 hours per week. If she makes $600, what is her total take-home pay? Okay, so sorry, that question should say if she makes $600 on commissions, on a sale rather. Okay, so we know that this is the option she's going to be paid in, option C. And her pay is going to be the hourly wage, which is $6.50, multiplied by the number of hours she worked, plus the sale of $600 that she made, multiplied by the commission that she gets on the sale. All right, so if you plug the numbers into your equation, you end up with 136. All right, so in this next section, we're going to work a little bit with graphs. So question 36 looks at a histogram, and it says how many students scored more than 60 on the test. Okay, so remember that histograms kind of look a little bit like this, and the kind of thing that you would do is you would read the title, the y-axis, in this case is the frequency, then the x-axis, and then to look at how much each bar is worth, if you look at September, for example, you follow it to the top, then to the left, that tells you how many, how many days it rained or how many people there are, whatever you're looking at. Okay, so if we look at those students that scored more than 60, we would look just at the blue and green bars, and you would have 40 that scored between 60 and 80, and 20 students scored between 80 and 100. So your correct answer would be 60. All right, so in this one, it asks you how many students are less than 120 centimeters tall. So same thing, I'm not going to go through it. So they're telling you less than 120 centimeters, so you would only look at that part of the histogram. And once again, you follow the bar to the top and then to the left, and that gives you how many people there are in each category. Okay, so we would add that 5, 3, the 2 plus 2, and 1 plus 1, and that gives you a total of 14 students less than 120. All right, the next one is a bar graph, and this is a double bar graph, okay? So remember, when you look at bar graphs or any type of graph, first you want to look at the title, if there's one, then you want to look at the y-axis and then at the x-axis. Sometimes there's also a legend, which is a little box on the top right, which we can see in the question. Okay, so in this case, the green bars represent the boys, and then the yellow bars represent girls. Okay, so if we look exclusively at the green bars, because we're asked about boys, you can see that in class 3 there were 50 boys, and in class 2 there was 40 boys. Okay, so your answer would be C is greater than or equal to 10. All right, so we're going to use the same graph, but in this case we're going to look at the ratio of girls that play tennis versus football. Okay, so once again, look at the title, look at the y-axis, look at the x-axis, and look at the legend. So we're dealing with girls in this case, so we want to look at the yellow bars, and we want to look at tennis and football. So you can see that there's 10 girls that play tennis, and there's 6 girls that played football. Okay, so your ratio would be 10 to 6. But remember, we always have to reduce it to the lowest expression. So if you divide both sides by 2, you end up with 5 to 3. So the answer is A. Okay, so question 40 is a drop-down menu question with a line graph. Okay, so once again, sometimes you have questions in the GED where you have these drop-down menus and you have to select your answer. And it's asking you when was the highest temperature was in New York. Okay, so what you would do is you look at the graph and find the highest point, which is there, and then it was at 4 o'clock and it was 55 degrees. So basically your answer is the highest temperature was at 4. Okay, so we're going to continue with line graphs. In this case, you can see that this line graph is a little bit busier. So it says, and it's also a drop-down menu question. So it says, in what year was the population of bears almost the same as the population of whales? So just a quick recap on line graphs. First thing, as always, you look at the title, then you look at your y-axis, your legend, and then your x-axis. Okay, so if you look at the legend there, it's telling you that the blue line represents bears and the gray line represents whales. So it's asking you what year was the population of bears almost the same as the population of whales. So what you want to do is find where those two lines intersect, which is there, and then that's year 2019. All right, so in the next section, we're going to go ahead and do some geometry questions. The first question is this: if angle D is 40 degrees, what is the measure of angle B? So what you have to remember is that whenever you get a four-sided plane figure, the sum of all of the angles is 360. Okay, so basically in this figure, angle A plus angle B plus angle C plus angle D is going to equal 360. And the second thing we know is that whenever you have this little square box, that's telling you that that's a right angle, which is 90 degrees. Okay, so angle C is a 90-degree angle, and also angle A. So if you put those numbers into your equation, you basically only have to solve for angle B. All right, so if you add all the numbers, it's 220 plus B. And in order to isolate B, you're going to subtract 220 from the left, do the same thing on the right. That gives you that B is 140. And then just to double check your work, make sure that you add up all the angles, and it should give you 360. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing, but in this case, we have a triangle. So here it's the same concept, except that when you look at angles of a triangle, regardless of what type of triangle you have, it's going to equal to 180, okay? Not 360, 180. So if you had a triangle, you would say angle 1, angle 2, and angle 3 are 180, okay? So this is what we have here. And all you have to do is plug those numbers that are given to you in the image into the equation, and then solve for C. So you would subtract 82 from the left side and subtract 82 from the right side, and that gives you that C is 98. And once again, check your work by adding all those angles up. All right, the next question is also a triangle question. So it says, if Mike places a 14-foot ladder 5 feet from the base of the wall, how far up the wall will the ladder reach to the nearest tenth of a foot? And here, what they're alluding to is this idea of the Pythagorean theorem, okay? That says that when you have a right angle triangle, this is the formula that you have to follow, okay? So essentially, what they're telling us is that we have a ladder against the wall of a building. We know that the ladder is 14 foot long, and we know that it's 5 feet from the base of the building to the ladder. And what they want us to know is how far up the wall the ladder will reach. So all you have to do is, using this formula, just plug in your numbers like that. Okay, so you would do this, and then the next thing that you're going to do is subtract 25 from the left side and add it to the right side. And subtract from the right side as well. That gives you a squared is equal to 171. And now remember that in order to get rid of a squared number, what you do is that you take the square root. Okay, so you take the square root of both sides. That gives you a is equal to 13. Option C. All right, so question 45 says a toy gift comes in a pyramid-shaped package. If the height of the package is 13 centimeters, the length and the width are 5 each, how many cubic centimeters does the package hold? All right, so essentially this is what a pyramid would look like. And you have to remember, if they ever talk to you about the base is equal to the length times the width, as you can see there in the image. And whenever you have these questions where you need to find a geometry formula, don't worry, because that is provided for you in the test, but you just have to make sure that you know what you have to use. Okay, so this is the formula for finding the volume of a pyramid. All right, so all you have to do is plug in those numbers. So we said that the base is the length times the width, and we said that the length is 5 and the width is 5. And then the height is 13. So if you work that out, that gives you 108.3, option A. Okay, question 46 asks you to find the perimeter of a figure. Okay, so first of all, let's remind ourselves what a perimeter is. So a perimeter is the distance around a figure. So basically you have to add this side plus that side, that side, that side, and that side. Okay, so all you have to do is take all those numbers together and add them together, and that gives you the perimeter, which is 74, option D. The next question says, Joe wants to cover a round table with plastic. What is the distance around the rim of the table? So essentially you have to find the circumference of a circle. So here, in order to find the circumference, the first thing that you do is that you're going to change that radius, which is 2 feet, and make it into a diameter. Okay, so the diameter is twice the radius. The reason you're doing this is because the formula for circumference is that, which is pi multiplied by the diameter. Okay, and remember that that shape there that looks like a table, that symbol is called pi, and it's worth 3.14. Okay, so you would just plug those two numbers in, and that gives you 12.56. All right, the next few questions look at slope and ordered pairs. All right, so it's telling you the ordered pair minus 3 and minus 2 is a solution for which of the following equations? All right, so this is actually a pretty straightforward problem. So first of all, remember that when they give you an ordered pair, so you two numbers like this, the first number, they're in order. Okay, so the first number is an x value, and the second number is a y value, a y coordinate. Okay, so if we go back to our question, the minus 3 would be your x value, and the minus 2 would be your y value. And all you have to do is plug those numbers into the equation that they give you as the answer option. Okay, so if we look at option A, and you plug these numbers in, you end up with 17 is equal to 17. Okay, so that would be your correct answer. If we look at option B and you introduce those numbers, you end up with minus 17 is equal to 17, which is wrong. If we do that for option C, you end up with minus 13 is equal to 17, so that one's wrong. And, excuse me, and D is also wrong. Okay, so the correct equation would be the first one. Okay, question 49. So this one tells us, where does the line with the equation y is equal to 5 intersect with the line with the equation 2y is equal to 3x plus 10? Okay, so once again, it looks a little bit like confusing, but very straightforward. So you're going to take that y value, which is 5, and you're going to plug it into that equation there on the left side. Okay, so you end up with that. And then if you solve this equation, clean it up, on the left side you end up with 10 is equal to minus 3x plus 10. Now, what we want to do is we want to isolate that minus 3x on the right side. So I'm going to subtract 10 from the right side, and I'm going to subtract 10 from the left side. That gives me 0 is equal to minus 3x. If I divide both sides by minus 3, that gives me that x is equal to 0. Okay, so my correct ordered pairs would be these, where x is equal to 0 and y, they told us in the question, was 5. All right, question 50. So what is the y-intercept of the line with the slope of 5 that passes through the point 1, 3? All right, so whenever they give you that word y-intercept of the line, this is a kind of like a red flag, not a red flag, but it's just what it's telling you, what they want you to understand is that they're asking you to remember the equation, what the y-intercept of the line is. Okay, so for slope equations, you either have the standard form that looks like this, or you have the y-intercept form, which is that. Okay, in the y-intercept, the m is the slope, and the b would be the y-intercept. Okay, so if we go back to the question, they're telling us, asking us about the y-intercept of the line. And they're giving us the slope, which is 5, that would be the value of m, and we're also getting an ordered, some ordered pairs, right? So all you have to do is include those numbers in the equation. So the y is equal to 3, the slope we said is equal to 5, and the x is equal to 1. And then what you want to do is solve for b. Okay, so you would subtract 5 from the right side and 5 from the left side. That gives you minus 2 is equal to b, which is answer C. All right, folks, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found some benefit from this. If you did, if you don't mind sharing with your friends or subscribing to the channel, that would be awesome. Thanks again. Have a great day.